What's up, guys? Dual Coast Podcast, episode 12. It is March 25th, 2025. It is a
What's up?
We're still on the East Coast for me, down in Florida right now.
Right on, man.
Cali.
Little sun, little beach.
That's right. We are still dual coast today, so that works out well. Russ, how you doing?
Coast to coast, baby.
Coast to coast.
Oh man, I'm doing good, man. I'm pumped today. I was sharing with you, I'm off to Vegas right after the show here, and going down to be with David Meltzer, and who is part owner of Napoleon Hill. And so I'm really, really pumped because he and I are launching a book. He's writing the foreword to my book, Imagine If. So I'm heading down there to promote it, be a part of a dinner tonight, be on the Sirius XM radio at the studio tomorrow. So it's exciting, man. And I'm excited about our topic today. And for those that are listening, I hope hope the words that we share, the thoughts that we have, are going to really resonate with you. So it's a good morning, man. And we're dual coasting it, and glad you're on, even though you're down in Florida.
That's it, man. That's it. I'm happy I'm here. Well, we got an interesting topic today, guys. So we focused a lot, I would say, on the physical wellness side of things. I think for the past couple of episodes, and Russ, I would say, probably agrees with that as well, just judging by our guests and weight loss and obesity and things of that nature. So today, I think we're going to take a little shift because we do try to always focus on two things here on Dual Coast: physical wellness and mental wellness. So today, we're going to take that shift over to mental wellness.
Yeah.
We're going to try to explain, I would say, and even things that me and Russ experience is how some difficulty with mental wellness in the workplace, how to navigate it in the workplace, how to navigate it in daily life. And Russ, would you agree with that?
100%, man. 100%. In the world, and I don't live in the business world. And, I've had very little experience being in that arena. To where, I'm commuting and, having to work a 9-to-5 job, or what, an 8-to-5 or whatever it may be. Right. And I have some friends that, that used to commute up to 2 hours one way. Okay. So you got 2 hours of that, then you got 8 to 9 hours in the office, then you're 2 hours back on the road. I know podcasts are a thing that help a lot of people, absorb some of that time whenever you're in the car. So at least you're mentally engaging in something and some thought and hopefully something that's resonating with you that you can think about to bypass some of that time. But, the thing about it is when you think about the workforce today, a lot of time and energy is focused on work, production and everything. And so what that does is when you're up against it and you're having to reach deadline after deadline after deadline, which is a part of our world, oftentimes what is left out of the picture is the physical aspect, but what happens to you mentally? What happens to you mentally when you are drained? When you are drained from overconsumption of work, you are just putting every ounce and every energy into work, and you're not allowing yourself the time for mental adjustment and mental aptitude for being healthy, right? So when you think about this, it's a struggle for a lot of people. And the implications and the struggles that go on in people's lives because they're not taking care of themselves, that's just work. Then you got to go home to maybe family, right? So a lot of time, you don't have a lot of time for yourself, which people need to have. So yes, there needs to be a physical regimen in it, that we need to have, which we have dealt with and talked a lot about here on Dual Coast. But, from the mental aspect, why are people struggling? What are the things that are causing them to decrease in their productivity, decrease in their clarity, decrease in, what they are giving to their family or what they're giving to themselves? So, we're seeing that, at an all-time high.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I think that's a lot of, where me and you maybe differ a little bit in that regard. You've been an entrepreneur your whole life, so you've never really gone for that 9-to-5 type position. You've always had a business, been an author, speaker, had the landscaping. So you never really, even though you work extremely hard, you never had to do that 9-to-5 type schedule.
That's right.
So for me, me being in the hospital and on the other end of things, I would say that I don't always work 9-to-5. It's usually like a 12-hour shift or, on call shifts and stuff like that. And for sure, it definitely takes a toll on you, especially if the job is laborious in nature, such as landscaping and things like that. Being in the operating room is extremely laborious, especially if you're in there for 8, 9 hours and stuff like that.
Right.
And I think from that realm, I think you do definitely lack your physical health, and your mental health kind of takes a toll on it from both aspects.
Yeah.
Because you're in there, you're focused on work, you're stressed about work, you're stressed about going home, and you can never really turn it off. And then if you don't have the time to turn it off, it just keeps parlaying on itself and parlaying on itself.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably difficult for a lot of people, especially like you said, trying to meet deadlines, which is probably one of today's biggest, factors, honestly, in the workplace. My girlfriend deals with it all the time. I think that you kind of have to recognize that. I think a lot of people have a hard time recognizing it in the workplace, that they're actually under that amount of stress, and they probably don't know how to change it and don't know where to focus their energy and don't know how to make that, transition to get out of that realm. And, I myself fall into that realm a lot of times too, just being stressed about work in general, going to work, being at work, finishing work, and then not knowing how to turn it off. Because a lot of times, I would say 90% of the workforce probably takes that mental health home with them.
100%. 100%.
They're still thinking about work. They're having a hard time sleeping. That parlays into the next day. They do it again and again and again, and it turns into a vicious cycle, I would say, of all downhill. So, me personally, I try to resolve with movement. We always talk about this, and I hate to go into the physical side of things again, but that's typically how I like to treat this problem, I guess you'd say. But yeah, I could totally see where, people fall into this pit, or people fall into this idea of like just a ball of anxiety, a ball of stress all the time. And like, how do you combat that? And Russ, I'll let you weigh in a little bit there.
Well, the thing about it is, people do work the hours, whatever hours they may work. But the thing about it is you mentioned, carrying that home with them, right? Well, not just carrying it, but actually continuing on in your workday at home, spending another couple, 2 to 3 hours at home, right?
Sure.
And if you have a family, you got a husband, you're a serious, partner, whatever it may be, you've got to get time to that, right? And then that leaves very little time for self. So you have to look at your entire day. You have to look at your entire day and see, where can I implement something in my life, whether I'm commuter, allows you to relax in that moment, right? To where you're not thinking always about work, 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 work. Taking time out for self, and we talk about the physical aspect, and I cannot stress enough the importance of just getting out for a walk. Last night it was amazing. I just went up to grab my car, bring it down closer to the house last night, and when I walked up there, it was so cool. I'm looking up and I see this fast moving light going over the top, right? And it's dark. It's like around 9 o'clock. And so I went on, I Googled it and everything, and it was the ISS,
Really?
yeah. And so I was like, okay, we're going to see it for the the next 7 to 8 days at this specific time, and for a certain amount of time. And this thing was just cruising over, but it was awesome, because not only just seeing that, but just being outside for that 10 minutes. I had already been down to the beach earlier in the day. So, finished the day, went out, spent 2.5 hours on the beach, hanging out with some friends, playing a little smash ball, getting some exercise, not thinking about work, right? Just getting away from that. And so really finding, what is it in our schedule? How can we implement something? If it's 10 minutes during the day, rather than sitting for 30 minutes to an hour, eating your lunch, cut that down to 20 minutes, take a 10-minute walk to reduce that stress that you may have, which helps your mental framework of mind. And I think that's vitally important to the anxiety and the stress that comes with work or with family. You've got to have find time for yourself. Even my daughter just recently said, she has 3 young boys. her husband was away for 10 days on a school trip. He's a dean of a school. He was away on this trip, and stress level, right? She's taking care of 3 young boys, and she goes, I realize I have to do something for me each week. I have to get away from that. Her stress is not work. It's work at home. It's taking care of 3 young boys. So, finding whatever it is that stresses you out, brings anxiety up, or you may be depressed, right? Finding what is it that you can mentally separate yourself from, because you've got to have that rest. You've got to have that exercise. You've got to have that movement in your body to reduce those levels.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think a lot of people do, like you said, it may not even be the workplace. It may just be the home atmosphere that they create, has stress for them. It could be the family life, financial aspect of things. Of course, I think that's one of the biggest things that weighs on people is finances.
Absolutely.
And not even the movement of things sometimes, guys. I think more so even just sitting down and breathing. Meditation.
Yeah.
Maybe just some low-grade stretching, something like that. Just something to take your mind off what's going on at the moment for you. It's just something that you can just kind of sit there, relax, take time for yourself, even if it's 10, 15 minutes type of thing. I mean, some people like to work out for an hour and a half, things like that. I think as long as you can concentrate on something for a couple of minutes, 10, 15, 20 minutes, get out of that realm. Don't think about work. Don't concentrate on the anxiety, because even when you get home, a lot of people are still focused on that anxiety. They don't have they don't have the outlet.
Yeah.
Even some people, I would say maybe even cooking may be an outlet for them. Getting into
reading a book,
cooking, reading a book, something like that. Anything that distracts the mind from that anxiety, from that thought process, and to get out of that whole realm of you've been at work all day. I've been so channel focused on this all day. How do I get away from it? And, a lot of people use movement as the outlet, me and Russ being 2 of those people, obviously. But maybe that's not for everybody. Maybe somebody does want to sit down and read a book. Maybe somebody does want to even just hop on the phone, honestly, and just do something outside of what they were doing. I don't recommend that outlet, but, it is still an outlet. It is still something to decrease the anxiety, I would say, to a degree. But I think reading, I think stretching, I think breathing techniques, I think meditation is huge. I'm trying to learn how to do that myself now. I think those are good outlets also if you're not going to be involved in the movement tactic of things, just to release anxiety, get your mind off that whole idea. And I think that's a good way to navigate it, is find your outlet, find a good way to release that stress, take your mind off the idea of things and focus your energy on somewhere else and channel that energy towards something. Russ, you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And, I think, something that, personally, so I can't really, give some insight on it but it's something that I aspire to do, is more meditating, just taking and just, taking some deep breaths, you know what I mean? Maybe sitting in darkness or some low light, in your house, to where you can just take 5 minutes and just deep breathe in silence. 5 minutes goes by pretty fast.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I personally challenged myself to do more of, as well as the stretching. I stretch before a workout. I stretch post workout. I'll stretch, before I'm playing volleyball. I stretch before I play smash ball, those kinds of things. But not just doing it when you're physically doing something, but doing it routinely, because stretching is so important for your body, right? Your blood flow, your muscles, the tissues. And so that's important. But I think the deep breathing is something that we haven't hit on a lot, but it's something that I encourage people to do as well. And I'm speaking to myself on this, as well.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of breathing techniques that can be utilized, guys. I would say, just from a relaxation standpoint, meditation being in that realm, sitting there, deep breathing. I would say get away from all the blue light, meaning the computer, the phone, things like that. Like Russ just said, turn all the lights down, dim, even maybe sit outside. Honestly, if you're, in nice weather, sunlight, do some deep breathing outside, ground yourself, for lack of better words, I would say.
Yeah.
And just go at it like that. I think that's probably one of the best things to do for relaxation tactics. Obviously movement plays a huge role here if you want to do the movement aspect of things, but I think just some low grade stretching, like we just touched on, And Russ, even like we talked about last week, maybe even like the saunaing and the cold plunges and stuff like that, those are great distraction tactics. Just laying in the sauna, vasodilate everything, get some good blood flow, maybe some light stretching or a light workout inside the sauna. Granted, sauna I know is not accessible for a lot of people, but even being in like the tub, hot shower, breathing in the hot shower, something along those lines where you could just relax for a couple of minutes, get your mind off the tension, get an outlet and utilize it.
And I think also social connectivity.
Yeah.
Having a friend or a relative that you can convey things to get things off of your chest, to get things out of your mind. The social connectivity of it from a mental standpoint is absolutely critical in daily living. Whether you don't necessarily need to talk to somebody every single day, but I have my outlet of friends at the beach that I probably see I see most of them every day, but doesn't mean I'm down there for 2.5 hours every day. But I do have that conversation piece where I'm not thinking about anything. I'm not thinking about work. I'm not thinking about what I need to do. I'm not thinking about an email I got to get out, or the book that I'm working on, or calls that I need to make, or whatever it may be. So even though, like for me, I'm not working the 9 to 5, I work my own hours, with landscaping, but I'm also working my own hours as far as doing what I'm doing, preparation for this, working on books, sending out emails, going on trips, promoting the books, those kinds of things. So yeah, that stress level can come up because in my own mind, I have my own deadlines, right? So I have to have, I need to have that mental outlet that I can connect to, that doesn't allow me to be so consumed with everything that I have to do, that I'm doing, because I've got to find that time. And so the social connectivity for me is a huge in the mental aspect, that I can release. I can talk to somebody, I can jump on the call, or I can go down to the beach and I can, hang out with some friends for a little while. So I want to encourage those that are listening, the social aspect of it is massive.
Yeah, I totally agree. The supportive relationships are definitely a huge key to success here, I would say. And every time I talk to you, you always have a phone call coming up, right? In the next hour, you have a call or that call or something like that. And that creates stress, right?
Yes.
So even though that's a social connectivity, it still creates stress because you have a topic at hand that needs to be discussed, right, or has a deadline, it formulates a deadline, and you want to get something accomplished there. So it's good to have social connectivity just outside of that realm. Like, I have a great, relationship with all the guys I work with. That's our social connectivity right there. We talk, right, even if we're in the operating room or outside the operating room, just in the cafeteria, just hanging out or whatever like that in between cases or something along those lines. We have great social connectivity between each other. We joke around, we laugh, and that's a great outlet just while you're even in the workplace. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, where they're in their job, they have people in the cubicle next to them or their boss or something like that. They could joke around for a few minutes, and just to get away from that whole idea of like, you're so focused on something all day. How do you get out of that realm for just a little bit? And that's a good social connectivity utilization right there. Just talk to people you're at work with, in the workplace with, even go hang out with them after work or something like that. Talk about, something different. Don't always focus on the workplace. Just get away from that realm for a little bit. Same thing with you. You take it to the beach a little bit. You socialize with those people. You play smash ball. You get away from the whole idea of the deadlines, the talking, the conversations, the landscaping, the business calls, everything like that. It's just a good outlet to get away from. If you could utilize it every single day, it's great. But if you can get it in, even 2 to 3 times a week, just try to get out of that realm and that whole idea of letting that anxiety build and build and build. I think that's probably the best way to do things. Also, like you're saying, Russ, is social connectivity. I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, our statement that we live by here at Dual Coast is wellness is not about perfection, but it's about progress. Correct. And so from a mental standpoint, I want to challenge those that are listening here today, or those that are going to see the recording later, is when you think about this, wellness is not about perfection. It's not about trying to be perfect each and every day, right? But it's just about moving forward, getting 1% better every single day. So challenge yourself today to step out, think about what you need to do to implement something in your life that's going to help you from a mental standpoint, so that you don't reach those levels of anxiety, those high levels of anxiety and stress. and so there's going to be deadlines. There's going to be times. There's that 9 to 5. There's that push, to get things done, whether you're working for yourself or whether you're working for somebody else. The most important thing is that you're able to maximize your time that you can have by yourself. And we hit on some of those points today. Don't try to be perfect with it, but just make progress each and every day.
Each and every day. Totally agree with that. Yeah, guys, we always say, how do you take that first step? And that's a big thing here that we talk about every single week almost, is take it step by step. Figure out that realm, how to get out of that realm each day, take a step forward, and keep making progress from there. It doesn't all have to be get it all out of the way right away. It's one step each day and keep making progress. And that's what we promote every single time we talk.
Absolutely. So I hope some of these things have been valuable for you guys today. And hopefully you'll be able to draw from some of those things, or maybe somebody that you work with, or it's a colleague or a friend that's living with high anxiety and stress. Maybe implement some of these things in conversation to help them out. But again, it's not about being perfect. It's just about being progressive, moving forward, one step at a time, just like Dan said.
That's right. We're going to land the plane here, Russ. Guys, Dual Coast Podcast, episode 12, March 2025. We're signing off. We'll see you guys next week. We've got some great conversation pieces next week. Guys, tune in. Follow us on Instagram, X, TikTok, Facebook. Check us out on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, guys. We'll see you guys next week, okay?
Peace out.